Welcome everybody to SQL Friday episode 4 with Gethyn Ellis, who is going to talk about the top 5 skills a DBA will need in 2020. This session is being recorded. It's going to be put online on YouTube and on sqlfriday.net. So you can watch it afterwards, and if you didn't make it to this meeting, obviously you are already watching the recorded version. Everybody please have your microphones muted. If you have any questions, put them into the chat and I will relay them to Gethyn. Gethyn, welcome to SQL Friday. Stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Magnus. That's very kind, and thank you for having me and putting up with me and letting me deliver my talk to you. So welcome everybody. This is a talk all about the top 5 skills a DBA, or perhaps it should be a data professional, will need in 2020. My name's Gethyn Ellis, and I'm gonna run you through this talk this morning or afternoon in Sweden. I'm conscious it's Midsummer's Day, and it sounds like it's a bit of a holiday. Magnus has been teasing me all week, telling me he's going to be drinking beer throughout the session today, but that hasn't materialised. But thank you all for coming anyway, and I do appreciate your time. And if there is a holiday there and you're having a nice day, I hope you're having a really good time, despite the sort of unusual circumstances we find ourselves in. It's been a pretty surreal 4, 5, 6 months here in the UK and I guess in Europe and pretty much around the world. It's starting to feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel, so it feels like we're getting there a little bit. But what I've done, whilst lockdown's been happening, I've been doing the odd, got involved with Data Weekender with Magnus, and we had a really good time with that. And we've been doing a few other bits as well, putting these things on. I've been speaking at other user groups. I've got some training that I'm running in July it's actually on Microsoft Azure, and it's just a fundamentals course. It's a nice one-day course. We're offering it at a massively discounted rate. It's about 70% off our standard price. So as a thank you for coming here today, if you want to make use of that, there's an Eventbrite site you can sign up at. And if you use the promo code SKILLS2020, you'll get a huge discount on our seat price should you wish. But I'm not here to sell you courses, so we'll move swiftly on. But if you do want to make use of that, you are more than welcome to. Now, so in this session, I'm going to tell you a story. Okay, I want to look at the skills a data professional working with the Microsoft Data Platform are likely to need in 2020 and going forward. So I'm going to discuss the role of the DBA, because that's my background, and the data professional as well, and how that has changed and morphed over the years back from when I started, and what skills I think you're going to need going forward. So undoubtedly, we're going to cover relational databases and SQL Server in particular. Okay, we're going to mention some of the features in SQL Server 2019 that are going to help add value to your business. And you'll see that over the years, the role has changed and the technology platform has evolved. Automation has become a big deal. Okay, we'll mention briefly some of the tools and scripting languages that you can use to automate repetitive tasks. So basically, I'm talking about PowerShell, and we'll touch on that. We're going to talk about different technologies as well, and multiple technologies, and how the technology platform is changing all the time. I'm just going to move that over there. And we're going to talk about the data revolution as well, how organizations have changed, how businesses have transformed, the culture and attitude towards IT and data in organizations, and how it's now seen as a value add to a business or a capability rather than a cost center as it may have been when I started out. So I'll give you a little bit of information about me. I've been working with SQL Server and the Microsoft Data Platform for about 20 years, and I've had a lot of jobs in that time. I started out as a help desk analyst, and in that role I started writing some reports looking at help desk tickets and various other things, and I kind of moved into web development, writing classic ASP apps many moons ago, way before .NET even came out. From there I kind of fell into a DBA role. I was first a sort of accidental DBA. My web apps were using SQL Server as a back end, and whilst it was good to have everybody signing in and logging in as system admin, it wasn't really best practice, and people were asking why they could, why certain people could see certain data. So I had to then learn how to implement a security model. And then, with all those people with SA, some stuff got dropped, and I needed to restore the database, and kind of learned as I was going along, took the accidental role, learning these skills, and kind of realized they were quite important. And then I ended up becoming a full-time DBA. The last 12 years, I've been running a small consulting and training business, GethynEllis.com. We've partnered with our friends at Widen to offer you some cost-effective solutions in the areas of things like data platform architecture, designing your solution, which includes things like high availability and disaster recovery, how best to license those, migrations and upgrades, including obviously moving to new versions, but migrating to the cloud as well. We can do health checks and performance tune-ups, and we do offer the Microsoft official curriculum. We're a Microsoft partner, and we're able the Microsoft curriculum of courses too. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and follow me on Twitter. I do follow back on Twitter. I don't use it as much as I perhaps use LinkedIn. I like to connect with everybody I do talks or people who talks I go to. I like to build up my network. So if you're not connected on LinkedIn and you'd like to connect, feel free to reach out. And if you want to get hold of me, my email address is on the slide there as well. It's Gethyn@GethynEllis.com. I do blog. There is a blog at GethynEllis.com you can go and read as well. My blog's sometimes a little bit intermittent, so I don't always. It's not always on a regular schedule, but I do try and blog at least once a month. So I'm going to tell you a story anyway. My session today, it's a bit of a story. It involves me, somebody called Hakima, a guy called Graham, Sheldon Cooper, and it's not the Sheldon Cooper you may have heard of from TV shows, and a chap called Jim. And this, my friends, is a true story. So where did I get the inspiration for this talk? Well, I was talking to a psychology master's graduate who had a very keen interest in data analytics. Now, on her course, she was using SPSS to do statistical modeling, and she was asking what other tools and technologies could be used to carry out data analysis. Now, we had a long discussion around analytics and how the relational database has been king of the data store for a very long time. But in the last 20 years or so, there's been something of a data revolution. Technology has evolved, technology has changed. Billion-dollar companies such as Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Netflix, Facebook, Twitter, King, these have all emerged as a result. Now, these are all obviously big tech companies, and they're some of the richest companies in the world. But other companies you might not necessarily associate with being sort of technology companies, they've embraced that data revolution too, to help improve their business. So I'm thinking like things like insurance companies, banks, looking and identifying fraud, healthcare for actually, like you can do massive or really cool stuff, identifying things like cancer in patients, and it does a pretty good job, of doing that. So all this is based off tech, and all this is based off data, and it got me to think about how the SQL Server product has changed over the years. So when I was talking to this graduate, we discussed structured and unstructured data, how things like commodity hardware had become cheaper, processing power had improved and become cheaper. It allowed more and more organizations, mainstream organizations, to embrace data analytics. And you can combine that with the amount of unstructured data out there that was previously difficult or expensive to mine, and you could turn that data into information that could then be used to make real decisions based on the data and get some really good results from it. So I thought about how the new features in SQL Server 2019 try to provide a product that will allow you to process and analyze your data and carry out that analytics in one place. So you've probably all heard of big data clusters in SQL Server 2019. It's a new feature in 2019. You can work with HDFS and process your unstructured data side by side with your granddad SQL Server databases. You can run Python and R. You can implement machine learning or from the SQL database engine. But other stuff has changed over those 20 years as well. Cloud, it's been around for a long time, but it wasn't around when I started, and it's only really in the last few years that cloud and Azure, AWS has gained any significant traction in my experience with the customers I've been working with. And there's a lot of reasons for this, but the benefits that the cloud bring and the improvements that have been in cloud providers has meant that the traction is on the rise, and the uptake of cloud is ever increasing. So as you can see there, I started to think about how my role as a data professional and a DBA has changed over the years, and as I was reflecting, reflecting on my career. So I'm going to take you back. I'm going to take you back 20 years, and to quote the film Titanic, it's been 84 years as she starts her story. Not quite in my case. I started back around about the year 2000 when Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston were a thing. The Nokia 3310 was the king of the phones and the phones of the masses. Windows XP had yet to make an appearance. I was fresh out of university with my business degree and my master's in computer science, and I got my first job in IT. I was working on a help desk, and from there quickly moved into the other roles I spoke about: report writing and web development, accidental DBA, and then DBA proper. And my first proper DBA job was for a large public sector organisation in South Wales, and it was in this large local authority where I first met Graham. Graham was the head of IT for a large local authority in Wales, and he was more of a strategy man. Right? He didn't know or want to know how the technology worked, but he wanted to know what it was capable of delivering for him. And he gave me some really useful pearls of wisdom that have stuck with me over the years. So he said, you can't know everything. You can't know everything about a technology. Nobody does. But if you know to find out or you know to ask, it'll be a great help. Okay, so I listened and learned. Now, I was working in Graham's team. I was a web developer at the time and then became an accidental DBA, which gave me all the skills and experience I needed to get my first proper DBA job. Now, when I started as a proper DBA, SQL Server 2000 was the latest and greatest version. I was writing reports on it, using it as a data store for my web applications. These apps became essential to the business. And I realized that I needed to do things like backups. I needed to make sure the data was secure. As it scaled up and became more critical to the business, it needed to perform as well. So I got my first DBA job in around about 2004, and it was a pretty straightforward switch. Well, I needed to ensure that SQL Server and its databases for my new employer, I could restore them, more importantly, but they needed to be backed up, and more importantly, I needed to restore them. My employer was a large police force, as you can imagine. Police force and uptime of their systems is quite critical, so I needed to keep downtime as low as possible. And police data is sensitive data. We need to make sure it was safe and secure, and it needs to be delivered in good time as well, so performance was key. So I was the DBA for a large police force in South Wales. I was doing all the sort of standard tasks you'd associate with a DBA, writing some SQL queries, moving some data around using DTS as it was then, and Crystal Reports was used to generate any sort of financial reports that we needed to report on. Servers were physical, they were racked in the computer room. I had access to those rooms and the console there, and I'd spend a reasonable amount of time in those rooms each week. Right? When I was doing my monitoring and looking at my databases and my database servers, I wanted to make sure a CPU was at 0. I didn't like it being used. If it went above 1 or 2, you get a bit worked up. All right? Pages were used for callouts, and callouts meant getting out of bed and visiting the office 20 miles down the road. Right. Large projects, they were delivered using the waterfall delivery method and waterfall development method. So gathering all your user requirements in full and upfront, then going away, building a massive project, testing it and handing it over to the users 6 months later, not delivering anything that they were potentially interested in. So at South Wales Police, I got some great training and some great experience as a DBA. So I was an MCDB, I think it was called back then, in SQL Server 2000. So I got myself certified, and more importantly, I got the experience working with a great team and some really good people. And the database manager at South Wales Police was a guy called Sheldon Cooper. Now, he was a data guy, right? And I asked him once, of all the things we do, what's the most important? And his answer was, a lot of people will give you the answer backups here, but the really important bit is being able to restore those backups should you ever need to. So another pearl of wisdom from Sheldon Cooper. So you need to think about some sort of questions that you might need to answer in 2000. If you ask these questions in 2000, like what is a cloud? Well, it depends on the weather as to the type of clouds that form, and they usually contain rain. What's a container? Well, I keep my lunch in a Tupperware container. Is that what you're asking? What's a scrum? Scrum's easy. I know that one. I used to play rugby in school. Right? So they decide to restart the game when there's been a knock on. What's a virtual machine? Something that searches the internet. What does NoSQL mean? Probably Excel. What is big data? I've got a 50 gig database here. That's pretty big. And what is DevOps? DevOps. Okay, right. So the development team, they sit on the 3rd floor of this building, and the operations team, they're in a porter cabin on the hill. things have changed, right? And it's now 2010. I've got more experience. Brad and Jen have now become Brad and Ange. Windows 7 is probably the operating system of choice. iPhone has made an appearance. Okay, your latest phone is probably a iPhone 3G. I'm getting my little business, GethynEllis.com, off the ground, trying to establish itself as a consultancy and training provider. But now we've got Jim on the scene. All right, and Jim, he's a passionate advocate of virtualization and virtualization technology, and VMware in particular. Now, Jim believes he believes that the technology should be utilized to its fullest to get your best return on investment. Okay, and Jim, he was also working at a client of mine. He wants me to run my SQL servers on a virtual platform. Now, up until this point in 2010, virtualization had been about, but I didn't really enjoy running my SQL servers on it because the hypervisor platforms back in the early days weren't particularly good at doing it, but they were getting better. So we started to embrace this virtualization approach and getting the most out of the technology. So we skipped on 10 years. It's now 2010. Jim's on the scene. Latest version of SQL Server in 2010 was SQL Server 2008 R2. And to this date, it's the only blip in the naming convention used for SQL Server. Since 2000, the release date has been used in the name of the version, and all releases since SQL Server 2000 have used this naming convention, with the exception of SQL Server 2008 R2. That was released in April 2010, and this naming convention caused a bit of controversy, and all subsequent versions reverted to the year of release. Now, think back to the tasks I was doing: backups, restore, security, and performance. They haven't gone anywhere. Okay, they're still there, but there's other stuff to learn now in 2010 as well. So we've got SSIS, we've got reporting services. It's around about this point, I think, businesses stopped seeing IT and their data as a cost center and started to look how they could utilize it to their advantage and improve their capabilities and improve what they were delivering for their business. Between 2000 and 2010, we had 3 new versions of SQL Server. We had SQL Server 2005, which came a full 5 years after the release of SQL Server 2000. This release was my first proper experience of seeing a new release of the data platform, and one where I was going to be doing some upgrades and migrations to it. There were a lot of changes, a lot of new features. Management Studio was introduced in this version, replacing Enterprise Manager. DDS was replaced by SSIS. Reporting services is now fully integrated into the release, and there's been a serious amount of change to analysis services too. 3 years later, SQL Server 2008 came along, and then 2 years after that, we got SQL Server 2008 R2. Now, there were fewer changes, there were new features and changes in each release, but they were probably slightly smaller than the 2005 release. All right? And the point I'm making about the release dates and the change in the length of time between releases kind of shows a switch in how software was being developed generally. All right? Instead of the big release with lots of new features, it moved to a model of fewer releases being released more frequently. And for the on-premises version of SQL Server, it's still following that pattern today. Instead of it being a big 5-year cycle, it's now roughly every 2 or 18 months. Virtualization was kicking off and starting to gain traction. DBAs were fighting it all the way, as they tend to do, mainly because, as I said earlier, SQL Server on some of the early hypervisor products didn't run SQL Server very well, and you could potentially run into lots of issues. But those problems were getting fixed, and SQL Server actually, by about 2010, depending on the workload and what you were trying to do with it, would actually run okay if you set it up correctly to run on a virtual platform. Now, virtualization is all about sharing resources. SQL Server 2008 R2 had a per processor based pricing and licensing model. So if you had 2 processors, each with 24 cores, you only had to buy a 2 processor license. Now, these licenses were not cheap, right? And if you had that mindset of keeping your CPU as low as possible and keeping your utilization as close to 0% as you can, you're not really getting the most out of your investment in your resources. Why can't that thing be doing 100% so I'm getting the most out of what I'm paying for these licenses? By the end of 2010, the release of SQL Server 2008 R2, BI and business intelligence is a big thing. okay, as was the sharing of resources through virtualization. So answering some of these questions, what's a container? Well, that's still something that I keep my lunch in, but by 2010, I know what a virtual machine is. It's a separate operating system environment running on a host with other operating systems around it. Key players in the hypervisor technology around them were VMware. They were the market leader. Hyper-V, which it was Microsoft offering, was behind, and it was in 2010. It was actually lagging. It wasn't nowhere near as good as VMware. But the core technology were in the VMware products. But by 2010, we now have cloud. It exists. AWS was launched in 2006. Azure followed in 2008. I don't think it was necessarily called Azure then. It had a bit of a different name, or it might have been called Azure, but it had a big long name to go with it. NoSQL. What does that mean? Well, there are non-relational data stores such as MongoDB starting to emerge, allowing you to process, store, and retrieve and analyze your non-relational data quite quickly. Big data, Hadoop, and the HDF platform is being developed and being developed quickly. The Scrum Alliance was formed in 2006. That's starting to get some traction for development and all about the frequent releases and releasing quickly. And from my experience in 2010, DevOps, the development team was still sat on the 3rd floor and the operations team was still in the porter cabin on the hill. Skip on to 2020, things have changed, right? We no longer have Brad and Ange, we just got Brad, we've got Windows 10. Every smartphone now looks the same, whether it's a Google phone, an iPhone, or a Samsung phone, or any of the other ones. They're probably quite hard to differentiate between. Windows 10 is now the operating system of choice, and GethynEllis.com is doing all right. We're surviving, and SQL Server 2019 is the release or current release to market version. Okay, so yeah, today we got SQL Server 2019. It's got a lot of stuff in it that perhaps you wouldn't traditionally associate with SQL Server. So it's got the big data clusters. You can analyze your big unstructured data next to your traditional granddad SQL Server databases. You can execute Python and R code, okay, allowing you to implement machine learning algorithms all in the SQL Server space. Okay, so you can do your data science and your predictive analytics on your data all from the same spot. Right? Now you might have more responsibility, but and I'll talk about this in a survey I run towards the end of this show. But the basics are still there, so you still need to be worried about backups. It might not be you doing them, you might not have much control over them. There might be an enterprise product backing up your databases, but you can sure as damn it bet with your bottom dollar, if that needs to restoring, you're going to need to know how to do it and how to use those tools to deliver it. Okay, so you still need to be able to recover. Security is a massive deal these days. There's lots of new security features in SQL Server that allow you to build these robust security models, making sure your data is safe and secure, but at the same time accessible to the people that need it. Now, since 2010, so over the last 10 years, there have been improvements in things like high availability, disaster recovery, availability groups were introduced in SQL Server 2012, and they've been improved and enhanced in every version since. Okay, you might be doing much more as the digital transformation and data transformation around organizations kick in. People are now making business decisions based on their data. Data is driving more and more business. Okay, so you might have been involved in a lot more analytics. You might have been involved in a lot more predictive modeling, making decisions based on probability and statistical models. Right? You might have a different job title. So back in 2000, we had DBA and developer. By 2010, well, DBAs were still there, although people were predicting their demise. You had database developers and you had BI developers. Now you've got the DBA, which, you know, people are predicting their demise, but Microsoft has just released a new Azure DBA technical certification. I don't think they're going anywhere soon. You're still going to have your SQL developers. You've still got your business intelligence consultants, but you might be a data scientist. You might be a data engineer. You might be a data architect. Whereas years gone by, you'd have been a developer or a DBA. So what skills do you need in 2020? I've come up with a list, hence the name of this course, the top 5 skills, and we're going to go through some of these in a little bit of detail. But you probably are going to need some cloud skills. You might need to have an understanding of how machine learning and analytics can work. And machine learning and analytics is kind of a tricky one, because you've got to kind of wear 3 different hats all in one, and it's where those hats overlap that the data science bit sits. You will need to know about cloud technology. You will need to know about different ways of working. COVID has been probably the greatest driver of digital transformation and technical change in organizations that I've ever seen. I've seen businesses go from overnight to being bricks and mortar, all based in one office businesses with no possibility for the employees working from home, to everybody being sat in their shed like I am today. Right, so there's lots of skills you're going to need going forward, and this is where I see it going. Now, the traditional database is not going anywhere anytime soon. The on-premise version is not going anywhere anytime soon. All right, so you will need to keep up to date with the new features of SQL Server 2019. I teach a cloud class on fundamentals, and I ask this question: is anyone here just solely cloud, only got their infrastructure in the cloud? The answer is always no. We're cloud first. Okay, great. So you got no on-prem stuff? Oh, no. We've got like all our databases on premises, but we use like Office 365 or whatever, and we use a little bit of Azure SQL database for some things, but I've still got the main mail bunker of my stuff is on-prem. And we're going to try to go there, but that's probably a 10-year job, right? It's not something you're going to quickly switch to overnight. Again, it depends on the size of your organization. But the features that are coming out in SQL Server 2019, some organizations, like insurance companies, for example, they have a massive reluctance to move to the cloud because they're quite risk-averse places. They like to know where their data sits. They like to know that they're in charge of it and nobody else is responsible for it. And I speak to lots of people who are in that same boat. So SQL Server, traditional databases, you're still going to need to know the basics, I think is where I'm going with this. And you will still need to keep abreast of new features as they're coming out. But you have to mention the cloud. The cloud is, and cloud providers are going to continue to gain traction. They are going to continue to grow. So as a data professional, it's good to know how you can help your organizations make use of some of the features in cloud technology that can really help deliver value. Okay, so when we think of cloud computing, there's some terms on the scale there. They all have this high availability built in. All right, you can make your computer services high availability. You can build in that redundancy without you actually having to worry about paying for the redundant databases. You can gain economies of scale. There's not a cloud provider out there that I would class as a small to medium-sized business. They're all extremely large companies that have got terrific buying power, and therefore they benefit from economies of scale that they can pass on even to some of the largest type businesses. Okay, you can change it. You can change your cost model, how you pay for your infrastructure and your IT services by using the cloud. You don't need to have that capital expenditure model where you invest millions up front. So if you are a new startup, using cloud technology is probably a good place to start, because you don't have to invest millions up front in the technology to deliver what you're going to be working on. You can scale things up quickly, you can cut things back quickly, and this is the same for all the providers: Azure, AWS, Google Cloud. I've got more experience with Azure, to be honest, much more experience in Azure. I've done a reasonable amount with AWS, and I've not really touched on Google's cloud too much. But the main point in here, security, which has been a main sort of stumbling block or a main point of resistance for organizations. Each cloud provider has worked on their security and their ability to comply with regulations like GDPR and other industry standards and regulations to try and remove that resistance. And this is why I've seen the traction increase, because, okay, well, the security is now good. We can make use of some of those other benefits. But even when you move to the cloud, you don't want to be one of these organizations that fall into a trap. And I've had clients that have that have taken this approach. Right? Well, I'm going to move to the cloud. I don't need a DBA anymore. I don't need technical staff. The cloud provider, they're going to do all that for me. All right. So off you go. You're no longer needed. It's not the case. Right? Cloud services, depending on the services that you pick, have got a shared responsibility model. Right, so what we've got on the screen there, if you're on premises, you're responsible for everything, right? You manage the lot. If you move to infrastructure as a service, the cloud provider is going to take care of basically the hardware and the data center, but you're still going to be responsible for everything from the operating system up. If you move to PaaS and platform as a service, you still need to take care of the application and your data. And even with software as a service, you have to worry about things like data access. Now, I describe this model as a bit like eating pizza, right? If you buy yourself a nice big clay oven to go in the garden with a log burner, and you can flame grill your pizzas in the garden, you're going to be responsible for managing the oven, cleaning the oven, preparing the pizza, buying the ingredients, making the bread, cooking it properly, dishing it up, serving it up on your cutlery, serving up on your knives and forks. You then have to wash the cutlery, put them away, maintain the oven, keep it serviced, keep it going, buy fuel for it, etc. Right, keeping it going. You're responsible for all that. Then you can think of like infrastructure as a service. Well, I've got an oven. It's not a pizza oven, and that's okay. I can buy this pre-prepared pizza that can go in my traditional oven. And I can cook it all up, and I can slice it and dice it and eat it on my cutlery, use my knives and forks, clean up afterwards, clean the oven, maybe service the oven if it needs it as well. That's kind of like infrastructure as a service, the pre-prepared pizza you buy at the supermarket. Platform as a service is your traditional takeaway pizza, right? You phone up and go, right, I want a pizza, please. Okay, and it'll cost you a bit more than the infrastructure as a service, but you've got less to do. You don't have to cook it, you don't have to prepare it, but it gets delivered to you. You do have to serve it on your knives and forks, and you do have to clean up afterwards. And then software as a service pizza is when you go out to Pizza Express and you pay for the pizza you ate, and somebody else worries about it afterwards. All you have to do is pick up the bill and getting yourself to and from the restaurant. So that's my kind of take on the shared responsibility. But some organizations think, oh, we've gone to the cloud bump, I don't need anybody. It's not true at all. PowerShell. Now, this integrates quite nicely with things like DevOps and continuous integration that I'm gonna talk about. But as a DBA, when I started out, when I was at Southwest Police, there was a team of 9 of us, and it was an Oracle SQL shop, and there was probably two and a half of us that worked on SQL Server full time. We probably managed about 20 or 30 instances. These days, I've worked for organizations where they've got 5 SQL Server instances. Perhaps they've got a stack of them between sort of dev, test, pre-prod, and UAT, and they've got a team of 3 managing a small number of instances. And I've seen a team of 3 managing 100 instances. If you get to that realm, you need to automate as much as you can. In PowerShell, if you're going to automate, it's going to be your friend. Now, it's not new. PowerShell has been around, I think, since about 2006. It's got a command line interface. It can be a scripting language all of its own. It's got loads of really useful commandlets and functions and filters. The SQL Server specific ones that will help you work with SQL Server. It's open source. I think it supports Linux and Mac OS as well. But there are lots of cool projects out there that no doubt some of you have seen. I know Magnus is a big fan of DBA tools. I am too. They're a fantastic suite of PowerShell functions and commandlets that you can use to do. Started off as doing upgrades, but you can do a huge amount with them these days. All built on PowerShell that will let you automate the managing your environment as much as you can. And remember, organizations there, well, we don't need another DBA, we're in the cloud. Well, I've still got 20 instances that need managing, patching, looking after, tuning. The more you can automate, the more time you get back to do some more of the fun stuff. You're going to need to know multiple technologies. Yes, we all know SQL Server is lovely, and that's probably what I've worked on over the years and specialized in. But you are going to need to perhaps know a little bit about Power BI. All right. You need to use the right tool for the job. Don't try and fit square pegs into round holes. So if a NoSQL database is the better solution for a given situation, go with that. Right? Use Azure Cosmos DB in the cloud, or MongoDB, or whatever your preference is. You might need to know a bit of Python, because these machine learning algorithms are not going to write and run themselves. You probably will need to know a bit about cloud technology. On-premise isn't going away. There might be some organizations that strict are solely on-premises, but it's more likely you're going to get a hybrid type of setup. So you might need to know a bit about Azure. You might need to know a bit about AWS. Business intelligence and the predictive analytics and making decisions based off your data, you're probably going to want to look at the visualizations of your data so you can help make decisions. Power BI is something that will interest you. So it's not just the SQL Server space anymore. Learning about these technologies, and you haven't got to know them in detail, because I'm seeing I look at lots of like sort of job boards and other things to keep abreast. But lots of jobs these days, it's not just I want a SQL Server expert. I want someone with deep understanding of SQL Server. They want that, plus they want you to know a bit about the other stuff. And the key here is just read blogs, come to stuff like this, learn what they can do and what they can be capable of. So when you're in a meeting and you need to make a decision and you're informed, it's like, oh, what can we do for that? Oh, well, we can use Power BI for that, or perhaps we could use Azure Cosmos DB for our distributed global database system of documents, or whatever it is you need. It's not an exhaustive list, but you do need to keep abreast of other technology and how they can likely impact you as a data professional. Data science. I taught a course 5 years ago now in Stockholm for a company called King. King, I think they're actually based in Sweden. I think that's where their headquarters are. But they've got offices around Europe. Are they based in Sweden, Magnus?
Yeah, they are. I think they're based in like the southern parts of Skåne or Lund or something.
Yeah. Well, we delivered this course in Stockholm, but it wasn't at their office there, but they had it at a company I was doing some work for's education centre. So they were all in Stockholm for it. But we went to Barcelona, and they've definitely got offices in London as well. But they've built their business, technology business. They make Candy Crush, for those of you that don't know, one of the most popular games on Facebook, and they built it using Facebook data. And they had a team of data scientists that actually wanted them to learn SQL, and I was teaching them how to write SQL queries. But they needed the technical skills and able to analyze and manipulate the data. They needed the statistical knowledge and how to interpret the statistical results they were given, but they needed those business skills as well to answer questions like, what ad is this user going to click on? What is going to help me monetize my free users by getting them to click ads? How can I sell them more stuff? What features are used? And this is a massively growth area. Netflix use it for they use this not only for like a recommendation engine for what you might like based on other people who have got very similar traits to you that you might not know you share traits with in recommending products, but they actually use it in making their stories, and they use it for writing stories. So they analyze when people turn off a TV show. What made them turn off there? How can we make it better so they don't turn off? And that's why you put Netflix on now and you can still be watching the same show 4 hours later and you've seen 5 different episodes of it because you don't want to turn it off. All right? They've done a good job. But data science, this digital revolution, this data revolution, is your data gold, and data science helps you answer some questions based on that data. And that kind of links in nicely with predictive analytics. I spoke about King. They made $4 billion based off Candy Crush and Facebook data. You've got your data there. You can run it through your machine learning algorithms, all based off these statistical models, and you can then make predictions off it. So I've touched on Netflix as well, making recommendations for shows. Amazon have got a really good integration engine. Going forward, though, and we've seen lots of cases of this already, you're going to need to be aware of the ethics around doing some of this stuff. All right. Now, I'm not going to talk about the Brexit vote because it's no point. It's done. I'm not going to talk about the US presidential election because there's no point. It's done. There's been some cool TV documentaries and stuff written around that. But ethics in this is quite important. So we've obviously got the political side of things and the influencing of elections using data, but there are others as well. So there's a really interesting story about a company in the US called Target, who are they're like a retailer, and there's a kind of a saying in retail that if you can sell new parents' nappies or diapers, they will come to you to buy everything else. So they'll come to you to buy all the baby's clothes, all your food shopping, if they're going to buy nappies. So what traditionally retailers used to do was look at the births register and identify mums and dads and get their address details off the sort of public records and send them some stuff. What Target did, using shopping basket analysis, they were able to make a prediction based off someone was buying and the changes in their buying habits as to whether or not they were pregnant. And they were really, really good at it. So they'd send new couples vouchers, congratulations on your pregnancy, here's your first set of nappies on us, come on down, before baby was born, based off these shopping habits, which was all well and good until a granddad to be found out that his young teenage daughter was pregnant because she was using his card, and they made the correct prediction that she was pregnant, but she hadn't told him yet, based off her shopping and changing in shopping habits. So he found out by a mail shot from Target that he was going to be a granddad. So there's ethics in there. There's companies out there that predict flight risks. You just need to be aware of those and well, everyone's got their own ethics and what it means to them. Just know what's right for you and what you're comfortable doing, I suppose. And we move on to DevOps. I've got a quote here from the DevOps Handbook. Imagine a world where your product owners, your development, your testers, your IT operations, your security staff work together, not just to help each other, but to ensure the organization succeeds, working towards that common goal. They can deliver fast, planned work into production, achieving that stability, reliability, availability, and security at the same time. Okay, now there's some interesting stakeholders listed in that definition. Think about all those people sharing a common goal, and if your organization does it now, right? It's all about fast flow. It's all about planned work. So it's not the Wild West where everyone's shooting everything up. All right. How can you balance that stability, reliability, and availability with that fast change? Okay, and that's just kind of where DevOps comes in. Now, DevOps it's not a title. It's not a separate team. It's not a tool. It's not just a culture. It's not just automation. It's definitely not anarchy, and it's definitely not one size fits all strategy. But if you can deliver that value quickly while achieving all the reliability and stability that your organization craves, you can deliver real value really quickly, and the business can see the value that you are delivering. Now, I think DevOps was coined in the early 2000s. It's only really come to fruition, for me anyway, over the last, I was going to say recently, last couple of years, but probably the last 5 or 6 years, I've really seen it, maybe 7 or 8, gain traction. Agile kind of came first, and this came off the back of that for me. Okay, so I started working with Scrum probably in around about 2011, 2012, and this has kind of come afterwards. But I'm seeing lots of organizations do this really well. I've seen lots of organizations do it really badly too, but that's probably a different story. But understanding that you're all going to be working perhaps in the same team, pulling towards the same goal, and you're not going to have that us and them culture. It's not going to be developers on the hill and operations in the porter cabins. You know what I mean? Basically, the phrase "it worked well on my machine" isn't going to fly if you're in a DevOps organization. Everyone's responsible for the outcome and delivering that value to the customer as quickly as you can. Okay. And you're going to need non-technical skills too. So I used to have a running joke when I teach a DBA class. What does DBA stand for? Don't bother asking. All right. You're only going to get 2 answers. It's either it depends or no. All right. And so it was a funny joke. It doesn't quite work as well when you deliver it online. But the key for a DBA these days is you need to have the technical skills. You need to have a wide range of technical skills. And if you specialize in an area like SQL Server, great, you're always going to be in demand. But if you can improve your non-technical skills as well, have a good understanding, fits in with the DevOps culture, of what the business needs, what its goals are, what it's trying to get to, it will allow you to show your value to the organization. So you need to do that by basically improving your communication skills and being able to talk to people, understand, not just talk to people, but understand and listen to requirements and then work out solutions and articulate that back. And there's loads of ways you can improve that. You can come to Magnus and ask if you can talk at the user group. That really helps. Helps with sort of speaking skills. You can write blogs, you can write articles, but it just gets you a way of formulating what's in your head down. And honestly, it comes with practice. The more you practice, the better you get at it. So to answer some of these questions in 2020, what's a container? Well, Docker's been around for a while. SQL Server 2019, big data clusters is very reliant on container technology for allowing you to spin up and spin down your big data nodes. VMware and Hyper-V are still big players in the virtualization market. That's not gone anywhere. There are significant players in cloud technology. So we've got Azure, AWS, and Amazon. We know what a non-relational SQL or no SQL means. We've got MongoDB. Big data is no longer a 50 gig database. We've got things like Hadoop, MongoDB, the company called King, and their petabytes and petabytes of data that they were processing using Hadoop, and a database called Exasol. And we know that we can work in an agile way to deliver value through things like Scrum and using a DevOps culture and a DevOps organization to help deliver value. But hopefully that points out that over the last 20 years and going into the year 2000s, the role of the data professional has changed. So that's kind of the end of my story, but it's not the end of the story. The data professional is going to continue to evolve. All right, so when I started, you were either a DBA or developer. By 2010, you had a DBA, a developer, a BI developer. Now you've got 2020, you could be a DBA, you could be a SQL developer, you could be a business intelligence developer, you could be a report writer, you could be a data engineer, a data scientist, a data architect. And the role shows the evolution, right? And it shows the data revolution and the digital transformation and digital change organizations have been on. Okay, so when I started, organizations needed people to help manage their data, right? That an organization generated. Now organizations structure themselves based on their data and how to make the best use out of it. And the ever-changing role of the data professional reflects that. So in my opinion, it's a very exciting time to be working in this space. But you need to keep learning and you need to keep developing your skills. So, top 5 skills that I think you're going to need going forward. You're going to need to know new features of SQL Server. You're going to need to work with multiple technologies, including but not limited to the cloud. You're going to need to have a decent understanding of big data, analytics, machine learning, and the value that can bring. And if you can work in a DevOps environment where you automate lots of stuff to allow you to deliver this continuous integration model, you can deliver real value for your organizations. And you've got those the technical skills too. Now, even though they're numbered on there, they're in no particular order. They were just my opinion. What is the number 1 skill? So according to 192 people who voted in my LinkedIn poll and took the time to do it, cloud technology is by far the winner. That's not just Azure, right? You might need to know a bit of AWS and Google Cloud. You might know about those two. But if you work on the Microsoft stack in your organization, it's a Microsoft platform, Azure and cloud seem to be the biggest aspect of digital transformation that people will think they need going forward. Analytics and DevOps and automation is second, with on-prem coming in 14. I think the people who voted in this, they're going to assume you've got the basic skills in on-premises SQL Server. You will still need those if you're starting out, but where they see the technology moving is towards cloud technology. And then another poll I've got a quote from Magnus himself here and a guy called Anthony Green. Is it worth getting certified in these? Well, obviously that can involve going on a training course and passing exams. The general consensus from another Twitter poll that I run, I've been the Twitter poll king the last month or so, is yes, they can actually help you in your career. They can help you get a job. They can be the differentiator. They're probably not a substitute. They're definitely not a substitute for experience, right? And if you want to get experience, getting certifications is perhaps not the way to achieve that. There are other ways of getting experience if you don't have any. But what they can do is give you that edge in the jobs market if you're going for a job. If you've got 2 people with the exact same skills and experience and everything else is the same and someone's got a certification and someone hasn't, it might tip the balance in the favor of the person who has got the certification. So at the beginning of this talk, I said I was chatting with a master's graduate who had a keen interest in data analytics. That's a Akima, right? And that chat really was the first stage in the interview process, and Akima now works for my business as a data analyst, and she is learning lots of skills. She's currently looking at Python and the data science side of things because that's what really interests her. But she's going to be keen to look at. She wants to learn a bit of Azure as well, and she has other things that she's done. But she's got a psychology graduate, so she likes the statistics behind. She likes the statistical models that drive organizations and how organizations make decisions. So, end of my session, guys. Thank you very much. We've looked at the skills a data professional will need working with SQL Server going forward. We've discussed how the role of the DBA has changed and morphed over the years from when I started. We spoke about how I still think you're going to need to know about SQL Server 2019 going forward. We spoke about how I think cloud will have a big impact. I think big data analytics and predictive analytics will be key too, along with delivering that value in a quick, reliable way to your organizations. And if you've got any questions, I guess now is the time to ask them. And I'll put that offer on the screen should anybody wish to use it. And if you've got any questions, feel free to drop me an email. I'm Gethyn@gethynellis.com.
Thank
you, Gethyn.
I have a strange echo, but I'll try to live with it. It was really good. It was not exactly what I thought it would be, because I haven't seen this talk before, but it was really nice, and I had some ahas, because we share a lot of our stories are the same, because I started as actually my first IT job was as a Microsoft Access consultant, building systems with Microsoft Access. I still think that's Microsoft's second best product. SQL Server being the best one. People laugh at me when I say it, but the prototyping you can do with Microsoft Access is amazing.
And on some of the courses I teach, Magnus, we use it as a prototype as a front end, and I've still got customers that use it as a front end. So it has its headaches, but it has a lot of uses.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't use it the same way I did when I was a consultant 20 years ago, building systems with it. We built like transactional systems with 30, 40 users doing like hundreds of thousands of transactions every day. That's not what I would use it for, but it works fairly fine for a lot of tasks. What's that fantastic noise in the background?
I don't know. I was just looking there.
We had someone not on mute. I'm gonna mute. Okay. So, but I went on to web development, and I was one of the first users or developers who started using ASP.NET, which was called ASP Plus back then. But nowadays, I try to open, Visual Studio C# solutions, and I don't know where to look for the code, because there's so many layers and event sourcing and what have you. So
yeah,
I stick to databases, but I agree that probably cloud is where everything is going in the end. It's going to be fast or slow, but it's coming there. So.
Yeah. We've got a question from Alan.
Yeah. What do you think about MS retiring SQL certificates?
Well, they've extended them now, I think, till the end of January because of the COVID lockdown. They have introduced an Azure DBA certification that I guess is intended to replace it. I think it's just reflective of where Microsoft are trying to take things. What do I feel about it? I don't know. Is the answer. I don't have any strong opinions either way. I keep some level of certification up. Being an MCT, I have to. I will be doing. I've done the data engineering certs, and I took the beta of the Azure DBA one, and it's quite. It felt quite close to some of the DBA type exams I've done before. It'd be interesting. It's changing all the time. They're bringing out new things all the time for those role-based certifications. So I think they're just trying to make it easier for people to perhaps get them, or make them a bit more keen to get them. Breaking it down to smaller chunks, maybe.
I mean, when I did my MCSE data platform, as it was called then, I had to do data warehousing, database administration, database development, architecture, and it was a very, very broad certification process. Then they changed it to this data management and analytics MCSE, which were fewer certifications.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think they probably saw too few making it to these certifications. People did 1 or 2 exams, but didn't get the diploma, basically.
Yeah.
I think it's good to have the role-based ones, because it's. But then, what are the roles? That's probably the big discussion. Because is there a DBA role or not? Is it a data engineer or whatever is it, and what's included?
That comes back to what I said. There's a DBA role now. I think it's called an Azure DBA. I think that they're offering. But people are calling themselves data engineers. There's lots of data scientists out there as well that perhaps they're still doing the same job as they were doing 20 years ago, but are now called data scientists, or everyone's favorite, the architect.
Yeah.
Everyone gets called an architect.
It's very easy to be an architect. There is no real requirements for it.
No.
Sorry if there are any architects in the room.
It's true though. It's like, oh, we need a good SQL Server architect. Well, what's that then? Do you want a DBA? Do you want a developer? What do you need him to do for you?
I mean, I try to call myself. I mean, when people ask what I do, my current job title in a customer where I do full-time work is application DBA, and then people ask me, "What's that?" I'm like, I work with data. If it has to do with data, that's probably me.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah.
You said something. I'm going to take over the presentation and share what used to be my favorite joke, but you got me thinking maybe it's not so fun anymore. What did the DBA tell the developer?
No.
It doesn't matter because they weren't paying attention anyway. And what did the developer ask the DBA? It doesn't matter because the answer was no. That's been my favorite joke in data for a long time. But maybe now the developer is the DBA. I don't know.
Yeah, well, maybe. I like that though. Some good jokes in
there. I want to thank you again for doing this presentation. It was awesome. I don't see any more questions, but I do see some comments that it was a great talk, and I agree with all of them. Coming up next Friday, there's not going to be a SQL Friday because I'm going to be out in the bushes with the scout troop trying to make fire or whatever I will do. But the week after that, we will have Marcus Ehrenmüller Jensen presenting about DAX, Introduction to Numeric Calculations in DAX, which is, I mean, DAX has been, we have seen death of the DBA being announced, and I think we have seen death of DAX being announced too, but it's going to stick around as well. And then we'll have Mike Bird presenting a self-tuning fill factor technique for SQL Server, which I think will be super interesting too. He's done it on GroupBy and he's going to do it on SQL Friday. I think he sent it into Past Summit as well, and he's a really great guy. He used to be a fighter pilot and a rocket scientist before that.
Wow.
And now he's a SQL geek. So that's his formal job title is SQL geek. So we got some great presentations coming up. So I'm really looking forward to them too.
Cool.
This session is being recorded. Like I said, I'm going to stop the recording now. I hope I will manage to get it online tomorrow or something. But now it's midsummer, so I'm going to go to the beach and celebrate.
Yeah, enjoy, guys. Have fun. And I'm going to go and enjoy the rain.
Oh yeah, the British Islands. It's raining.
Surprise! Shock. All right, guys. Thanks for having me, and I'll hopefully see you all soon.
Yeah. See
Thanks
you, man.
a lot. Bye.
Bye.